In 1993, Tombstone burst onto the big screen with intense shootouts, thick clouds of gun smoke, and the steely gazes of Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer. A Western epic brought vividly to life, etched into the hearts of audiences with honor, courage, and bloodshed. But behind that spotlight were shadows few ever saw: sudden losses, devastating illnesses, and quiet tragedies that followed these stars throughout their lives. Are you ready to step into the darker side of Tombstone? The truths you're about to uncover may leave you shaken. Robert Mitchum took on the role of narrator in Tombstone at age 76, lending the film a voice that felt grand, timeless, and full of quiet tragedy. That voice wasn't just performance, it carried the weight of a life that had seen more than its share of pain. Mitchum was born Robert Charles Durr Mitchum on August 6, 1917 in Bridgeport, Connecticut. When he was only 2, his father died in a railroad accident. That single moment changed everything. Raised in poverty, Mitchum grew up drifting between cities, often hopping freight trains to find work. By the time he was 16, he ended up in reform school for a minor offense. At night, he'd lie awake listening to trains pass by, echoes of the boxcars he used to cling to. Those early struggles shaped the persona he became known for: rugged, weary, and hard to shake. In the 1947 film Out of the Past, Mitchum didn't just act the part. He seemed to channel his own life into the role. He married Dorothy Spence, his teenage sweetheart, hoping for stability. But Hollywood had other plans. Fame brought temptation, and Mitchum was pulled into affairs with stars like Ava Gardner and Gene Simmons. Despite it all, Dorothy stayed silent and stayed with him for nearly 60 years. That conflict between his loyalty at home and his personal failures wore him down. He drank heavily and smoked constantly, habits that would follow him for decades. Over time, they took their toll. In his later years, lung cancer and emphysema weakened the strong, commanding man that audiences once admired. His children, now grown and scattered, lived their own lives. Mitchum was left with his memories and the silence of old age. On July 1, 1997, Robert Mitchum died in his sleep. The only person by his side was Dorothy, the woman who had seen it all from his rise to his lowest moments. His estate was estimated at around $10 million, but that number doesn't begin to describe what he left behind. His true legacy lives in the unforgettable characters he portrayed and in the haunted, soulful eyes that still linger on screen. Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday. At just 33 when he played Doc Holliday in Tombstone, Val Kilmer captivated viewers as the tragic romantic gunslinger grappling with mortality and heartbreak. That role went deeper than acting. It mirrored Kilmer's own journey through fame, pain, and resilience. Born on December 31, 1959 in Los Angeles, Kilmer experienced loss early. His younger brother Wesley drowned, a tragedy that left a lasting emotional wound. That grief shaped Kilmer's sensitivity, but also made him guarded and quietly lonely. He shot to fame with powerful roles like Iceman in Top Gun 1986 and Jim Morrison in The Doors 1991. But behind the success, he constantly fought to prove himself and escape typecasting. His marriage to actress Joanne Whalley, once a bright spot during turbulent times, ended in 1996. Rumors of conflict on set and infidelity strained their relationship, and the split led to depression and distance from both his children and himself. Kilmer's career had its challenges. He clashed with directors and co-stars on set, like during The Island of Dr. Moreau and Batman Forever. Despite his undeniable talent, his reputation became difficult, a shadow that followed him even on his best days. His toughest battle came in 2015 when throat cancer claimed his signature deep voice. Surgeries, chemotherapy, and a tracheostomy tube became part of his life. Still, he made a touching return as Iceman in Top Gun Maverick 2022. Those final years were defined by a courageous, quiet fight against illness, aging, and solitude. On April 1, 2025, Val Kilmer passed away at age 65. He left an estimated net worth of $25 million thanks to a career built on unforgettable, iconic roles. His legacy stands as a testament to artistic passion and the steep price of pursuing it with unflinching dedication. Charlton Heston as Henry Hooker. Charlton Heston was 70 years old when he appeared in Tombstone, playing the role of Henry Hooker, a principled rancher who supported Wyatt Earp and his men in their stand for justice. His screen time was brief and he had only a few lines, but Heston's presence gave the film a quiet strength and moral weight that stayed with audiences long after the credits rolled. Behind that strong and dignified figure was a life marked by pain. Heston born Charlton. Henry Heston, on October 4, 1923, in Illinois, grew up during the Great Depression. His parents' divorce left him wounded early. He was raised by his mother and stepfather in the remote woods of Michigan. Life there was hard, lonely, often hungry, and far from any comfort. That kind of childhood left scars that stayed with him even after he became one of Hollywood's biggest stars. His breakthrough came with iconic roles in The Ten Commandments and Ben-Hur, where he played larger-than-life heroes. But the more famous he became, the more distant he seemed from those around him. Though he was married to Lydia Clark for 64 years and had 2 children, Fraser and Holly, Heston often seemed emotionally removed. Stardom brought pressure, and he turned to alcohol to cope with the emptiness fame couldn't fix. By the time he neared 80 around the year 2000, Heston checked himself into rehab, a private fight against years of quiet pain. Not long after, Alzheimer's disease began to take hold. The man known for portraying unforgettable historical characters started to lose his own memories. It was a slow fade for someone who once commanded the screen with such power. Charlton Heston passed away in his sleep on April 5, 2008, at his home in Beverly Hills. He was 84. Lydia was by his side, the same woman who had stood by him through triumph and decline, through crowds and silence. His net worth was estimated around $40 million, but money was never the legacy. What remains is the image of Heston on screen, heroic, powerful, and yet behind it all, a quiet, solitary man. Don Collier as the High Roller. Don Collier was 65 when he appeared in Tombstone, playing the role of the High Roller, a cold, seasoned gambler who watched the violence of the Wild West from the sidelines. Though his screen time was short, Collier left an impression. His performance captured a man who had seen too much, who spoke little but understood everything. That character wasn't far from Collier himself, a man shaped by hardship, carrying the quiet weight of his own life's battles. Don Collier was born on October 17, 1928, in Santa Monica, California. He grew up during the Great Depression when poverty swept through families and towns. Like many kids of his time, he learned to survive early. As a young man, he took whatever work he could find. He was a lumberjack, a sailor, a surveyor, anything to stay afloat. After serving in the Navy, he chased his dream of acting, but the path wasn't easy. Behind the scenes, Collier struggled with alcoholism and a fear of failure that followed him for years. It cost him chances, even with roles in big westerns like El Dorado, 1966, and The War Wagon, 1967. Success always felt just out of reach. His personal life had its own share of heartbreak. His first marriage to Sharon Knight ended in divorce. Even after marrying Mary Lou, the loneliness never completely left him. Later in life, Collier found a kind of peace. He hosted The Desert Speaks, performed solo acts, and embraced a quieter fame. But under it all, there was still a sadness, a sense of drifting, as friends and co-stars from his prime slowly passed away. He held on to the memories, even as the world he knew faded around him. On September 13, 2021, Don Collier died of lung cancer in Harrodsburg, Kentucky. He was 92. His net worth was estimated at around $3 million, a modest amount for someone who worked in the industry for nearly 70 years. But what he left behind was more than money. He was the kind of actor who didn't chase the spotlight. He just kept showing up, quietly doing the work, leaving behind a legacy of grit, humility, and heart. Kerry Jr. as Marshal Fred White. At 72, Kerry Jr. appeared in Tombstone as Marshal Fred White, a kind-hearted lawman holding on to ideals of justice in a violent and lawless West. His role was brief, but his performance left a mark, a quiet, dignified man trying to bring order, only to be taken down by senseless violence. It was a role that fit Kerry Jr., not just as an actor, but as a man shaped by history, legacy, and quiet personal loss. Harry George Kerry Jr. was born on May 16, 1921, in the rural town of Saugus, California. From the beginning, he lived in the shadow of legends. His father, Harry Carey, was a silent film icon, and his mother, Olive, was an actress. Growing up on film sets, Kerry Jr. became part of director John Ford's cinematic family, starring in Western classics like Three Godfathers, 1948, and The Searchers, 1956. But for much of his life, he struggled with being known only as Harry Carey's son, a title that sometimes felt more like a burden than an honor. His personal life had its own deep wounds. His marriage to Marilyn Fix lasted through many ups and downs, but in 1989, tragedy struck. Their eldest son, Stephen, died unexpectedly. The loss changed Kerry Jr. profoundly. He became more withdrawn, stepping back from the film world that had once defined him. Even in later roles, like Mask, 1985, and Back to the Future, Part 3, 1990, there was a visible sadness behind his eyes. As he aged, the people he once worked alongside, John Wayne, Ben Johnson, and John Ford, had all passed. Hollywood had changed, and Kerry Jr. no longer felt like he belonged to it. On December 27, 2012, Harry Carey Jr. passed away quietly at a hospice in Santa Barbara at the age of 91. His ashes were laid to rest at Westwood Village Memorial Park. His net worth was around $5 million, but that wasn't his true legacy. What remains is a lifetime of loyalty to cinema and to the noble characters he brought to life, men of honor holding fast to ideals in a world that kept falling apart. Grant James as Dr. Goodfellow. At 58, Grant James appeared in Tombstone, 1993, as Dr. Goodfellow, a devoted doctor trying to bring healing to a brutal, unforgiving West. Though his role was small, it reflected the man behind the character, quiet, persistent, often just outside the spotlight he hoped to reach. In many ways, James's life mirrored that character, present, valuable, but rarely recognized. Born on June 19, 1935 in Medina, Ohio, Grant James grew up in a broken home. His parents' separation left him with emotional wounds that followed him for life. That early pain drove a deep desire to be seen, to be acknowledged, to matter. He worked hard, contributing to shows like Walker, Texas Ranger, and became a respected voice actor in the Dallas anime scene. But despite his efforts, James never quite became a household name. He was known, appreciated, but always in the background. The road was never easy. James faced long gaps between jobs, financial stress, and the constant pressure to provide. It left him doubting himself, questioning if his work truly mattered. His personal life brought its own heartbreak. His first marriage to Barbara Grant ended after 6 years. Though he had children, including a daughter, Susan, who followed his path into acting, he struggled to connect. When Susan passed away suddenly in 2009, it left a deep void, one that never truly healed. Later, James found companionship with Julie Erickson. Together, they mentored young actors, sharing their experience and keeping the flame alive for others. Still, the quiet sadness never fully left. As friends and colleagues passed on, James often found himself alone with his memories. In his final years, James's health declined. He lived quietly in Spokane, Washington, sometimes lending his voice to small projects, but mostly looking back on a life of perseverance. Grant James passed away on November 23, 2022, at the age of 87. His net worth was estimated at around $2 million, not a fortune, but his real legacy was in the passion he passed down, the talent he nurtured, and the quiet strength of a man who kept going even when few were watching. Bill Paxton as Morgan Earp. At 38, Bill Paxton took on the role of Morgan Earp in Tombstone, the youngest of the Earp brothers, a hopeful gunslinger who believed in justice, but was ultimately met with tragedy in the unforgiving West. The character's bright spirit and quiet strength mirrored Paxton himself, a man full of energy but no stranger to silent battles. Born on May 17, 1955 in Fort Worth, Texas, Paxton had a childhood marked by instability. His family moved often due to financial hardship, and that constant change left him with a sense of uncertainty that never quite went away. That early restlessness drove him to prove himself, to find something steady and lasting. But making it in Hollywood wasn't easy. Before landing big roles in Apollo 13 and Twister, Paxton struggled. He worked bit parts, like a nameless punk in The Terminator and a panicked soldier in Aliens, trying to carve out space in a world that rarely made room for newcomers. Slowly, he built a reputation as a reliable and heartfelt performer, one who brought humanity even to the smallest roles. At home, things seemed steady. He married Louise Newberry, his childhood sweetheart, and they had 2 children, James and Lydia. But even with a loving family, Paxton quietly carried the pressure of being both a present father and a working actor. Long shoots, public scrutiny, and a fear of being typecast wore him down. He often worried that each role might be his last, that success could slip away as quickly as it came. Near the end of his life, tragedy struck. A heart condition linked to childhood rheumatic fever led to surgery in early 2017. Complications from that procedure forced a second operation. Just 10 days later, on February 25, 2017, Paxton died suddenly from a stroke. He was 61. His ashes were laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park. Bill Paxton left behind an estate valued at about $25 million, but more lasting than wealth was the way he made audiences feel, rooting for the underdog, connecting with real emotion, and always delivering with humility. His career was steady, his presence unforgettable. Powers Boothe as Curly Bill Brocious. At 45, Powers Boothe took on the role of Curly Bill Brocious in Tombstone, a fierce, magnetic outlaw who brought chaos to the untamed West. Booth's performance went beyond acting. He brought a sense of control and danger to the screen, but behind that presence was a man carrying quiet pain and inner battles no one could see. Born on June 1, 1948 in the struggling town of Snyder, Texas, Boothe grew up with hardship. When his father passed away, the loss left a lasting hole in his life. That pain lit a fire in him. He poured himself into school, sports, and eventually theater, anything to rise above where he came from. Boothe's big break came in 1980 with Guyana Tragedy, the story of Jim Jones, a role that earned him an Emmy. But with fame came a price. Hollywood saw him as the perfect villain, casting him again and again in dark, menacing roles. He played them well, but privately, Boothe admitted those characters took a toll. The darkness of those roles often followed him home, pushing him into quiet depression. From the outside, his personal life looked solid. He was married to Pam Cole, his college sweetheart, and they had 2 children, Paris and Preston. But success came with sacrifice. Long filming schedules kept him away from home for weeks or months, and though he loved his family, he spent many nights alone, fighting the weight of distance and doubt. In his final years, Boothe faced his toughest battle, pancreatic cancer. He didn't speak much about it, but even as his health declined, he kept working, giving everything he had to his last roles in Nashville and Agents of SHI ELD. On May 14, 2017, Powers Boothe died at home in Los Angeles. He was 68. His net worth was estimated at around $8 million, modest for a man who worked so long and so hard. But Boothe never chased fortune. What he left behind was a legacy of unforgettable characters, a voice of quiet intensity, and a career built on strength, skill, and depth few could match. Sanford Gibbons as Father Fenny. At 60 years old, Sanford Gibbons played Father Fenny in Tombstone, a kind and gentle priest offering rare moments of hope and compassion in a world filled with bloodshed and lawlessness. For Gibbons, the role was more than just acting. It brought him comfort, a way to reflect the quiet strength and struggles he knew all too well in his own life. Sanford Gibbons was born on September 5, 1933 in Kansas City, Missouri. He grew up under the strict expectations of a deeply religious family. Their faith shaped his values, but it also left him feeling boxed in. From a young age, Gibbons longed for freedom, for a chance to express himself beyond the limits set for him. Acting became his escape, a place to breathe. Early roles on shows like Alfred Hitchcock Presents in the 1960s showed promise. But the path in Hollywood was never easy. Pay was uncertain, the competition was relentless, and meaningful roles were hard to come by. Over time, the pressure wore him down. In moments of weakness, he turned to alcohol, hoping to find relief. Instead, it became another weight on his shoulders, casting a shadow over many years of his life. Gibbons found love early, marrying actress Grace Williams. For a while, they seemed solid, like they could build something lasting in an unpredictable world. But long stretches apart, limited roles, and his personal demons pulled them away from each other. Their divorce left him heartbroken. He loved his two children deeply, but over time, the emotional distance grew, and with it came regrets that stayed with him for the rest of his life. He remarried later on, hoping for a fresh start. But the scars from the past remained. No matter how many comforting roles he played on screen, the loneliness never fully left. Behind the kind words and spiritual characters was a man still searching for peace. In his later years, as the lights of Hollywood dimmed, Gibbons chose a quieter life. He settled in Arizona, where he taught acting, wrote, and reflected on the highs and lows of his journey. On December 29, 2018, Sanford Gibbons passed away from a heart attack at his home in Phoenix. He was 85. His estate, estimated at around $1 million, was modest by Hollywood standards, but his legacy was quiet perseverance and the warmth he shared with those who knew him. Pedro Armandares Jr. as the priest. At 53, Pedro Armandares Jr. appeared in Tombstone as the compassionate priest, a gentle, empathetic figure offering a moment of grace in the brutal chaos of the American frontier. The role may have been small, but for Armandares Jr., it was personal. It echoed the quiet pain and lifelong struggles he carried, both as a man and as an actor. Born on April 6, 1940 in Mexico City, Armandares Jr. was the son of two film icons, his father, Pedro Armandares Sr., and his mother, actress Carmelita Boer. From childhood, he lived under the weight of that legacy, always known more for who he came from than who he was. Though he appeared in major international films like Earthquake, 1974, and License to Kill, 1989, he was often typecast in supporting roles. Despite his talent, true stardom stayed just out of reach. Over time, the quiet frustration grew. He searched for a place where he could step out of the shadow to be seen for his own gifts. That search also echoed in his personal life. He married twice, first to Carmen Patricia Aria, then to Carmen Salinas, hoping for peace. But his career kept him on the move, with long absences that slowly eroded the connections he tried to hold on to. By the time he starred in Amistad, 1997, and The Mask of Zorro, 1998, those gaps had become too wide to close. He spent many nights in foreign cities, haunted by the guilt of being a distant husband and father. In his final years, tragedy struck. He was diagnosed with eye cancer, not just a threat to his health, but to his vision, the very tool that had connected him to his craft. He kept working, appearing in Once Upon a Time in Mexico, 2003, and The Legend of Zorro, 2005, but his strength was fading. The illness wore him down, and so did the dreams of roles he would never play. On December 26, 2011, Pedro Armandares Jr. died in New York at the age of 71. His estate was valued at about $4 million, a modest sum for a man who gave so much to film. He was laid to rest beside his father in Mexico City, closing the book on a life of quiet struggle and deep, unwavering love for the craft he served until the very end. Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp. At 42, Kurt Russell stepped into the boots of Wyatt Earp in Tombstone, the legendary, morally conflicted lawman of the Old West. Like Earp, Russell has navigated a long career filled with high-profile roles and private struggles. Born on March 17, 1951 in Springfield, Massachusetts, Russell is the son of actor Bing Russell. Growing up amid Hollywood spotlight brought both opportunity and pressure. He began as a Disney child actor in movies like The Computer Who Wore Tennis Shoes, A Stepping Stone, but also a box he wanted to break out of. In the 1980s, he carved a reputation with tough, memorable roles in Escape from New York and The Thing. Still, Russell felt the urge to challenge himself with more complex characters, and his role as Wyatt Earp gave him that depth, a man of authority yet deeply human and conflicted. His personal life mirrored that journey. His first marriage to Susan Hubley ended in 1983 amid the usual pressures of career and trust. He coped with heartbreak and co-parenting their son Boston while staying active in his work. In 2003, the death of his father, Bing, his lifelong role model, led him into a period of reflection on his own legacy and what mattered most. Russell found enduring love when he and Goldie Hawn built a blended family with 4 kids, creating a warm, grounded home despite the spotlight. Together, they've shown how to juggle fame, family, and friendship through highs and lows. In recent years, Russell has pursued roles in The Hateful Eight and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, characters that honor his journey and his love for cinema. At 74 today, Russell is recognized as a Hollywood icon with an estimated net worth of $100 million, reflecting over 6 decades on screen, from Escape from New York to The Christmas Chronicles. Above all, he's remembered as an actor of resilience, someone whose balanced passion and responsibility evolved with time and redefined himself with every role. Michael Biehn as Johnny Ringo. At 37, Michael Biehn brought intensity to the role of Johnny Ringo in Tombstone, a cold-blooded, philosophical gunman whose icy stare and quiet menace made him unforgettable. His showdowns with Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday became some of the film's most iconic moments. But behind that performance was a man no stranger to conflict and loneliness himself. Born on July 31, 1956 in Anniston, Alabama, Biehn came from a broken home. His parents' divorce left him searching for identity and stability. While he found early success with major roles in The Terminator 1984 and Aliens 1986, his career faded faster than expected, due in part to difficult industry politics and his own blunt, no-nonsense approach. Away from the spotlight, things were just as rough. Biehn battled alcoholism, which strained and eventually ended his first 2 marriages. The fallout also made it hard to stay close to his children from those relationships. The real turning point came around 2008 when he suffered a stroke and underwent risky open-heart surgery. The experience left him shaken, but also gave him clarity. In the years that followed, Biehn chose a quieter path. With his third wife, actress Jennifer Blanc, and their son Dashiell, he focused on independent films and teaching, sharing wisdom earned through hardship. Though no longer in the Hollywood spotlight, Biehn's influence continues through smaller roles and mentorship. As of 2025, Michael Biehn is 69 years old. He's still active, living modestly with an estimated net worth of around $8 million, mostly from SAG pensions and indie film work. His legacy isn't about box office numbers, but about honesty, resilience, and a career that reflects the hard-earned truth behind the image. The story of the Tombstone cast is more than Hollywood history. It's a journey filled with triumphs and deep heartbreak. Some found fame but lost themselves along the way. Others left us too soon, their stories lingering long after the credits rolled. Which Tombstone character moved you the most, and whose real-life story stays with you? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video to honor these legends. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.